gathering, isn't it?
Can you all hear us okay? Fantastic. So, my name is Irena Bednarich. I'm the Vice President of International Government Relations at HPE, and I look also after strategic partnerships. On behalf of the AI House and HPE, I would like to really warmly welcome you to the panel on defining sovereignty in the new era of AI. So obviously there are really a lot of conversations on AI in Davos this year, as it was also the case last year. But the AI House carries a very particular space, and we have Hannah here, so we are delighted to be strategic partners of the AI House, really to promote, to be a catalyst of all things AI, and bringing this really powerful ecosystem into one place here in Davos. So again, lots of conversations on AI ongoing, but there are really three aspects that we would like to address in the panel today. The first one is really what is sovereign AI? So there are different people or different stakeholders have different understanding of what is sovereign AI. Secondly, what can sovereign AI do for competitiveness, national security, and R&D? And thirdly, more specifically, what is the correct infrastructure that you actually need to go for to allow sovereign AI to achieve what we'll hear for the economies of your nations? So, and to do that, we have an incredibly strong panel here today. Very grateful for all our speakers to help us unpack these three aspects of sovereign AI. So I will start with you, Kiril Evtimov, Chief Executive Officer of Core42 and Group CTO of G42. And we're also delighted to be strategic partners with you guys of the AI House. So thank you for being with us. Dr. Kimberley Budil, Director, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. Thank you for being with us, Kim. Then we have Dariusz Standerski, Secretary of State, Polish Minister of Digital Affairs. Thank you. And last but not least, Phil Mottram, Executive Vice President and General Manager of Intelligent Edge at HPE. So we said we'll start with understanding what is sovereign AI and what can it do for the national competitiveness, defense, and R&D. And so I would really like to start with a very open question to whoever wants to take it first. What do you understand as sovereign AI, and what can it do for the strategic interest of your nations? Anyone wants to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. So I work in the Department of Energy National Lab System in the United States. It's a system of 17 national laboratories that span missions across energy, science, and national security. And so we're a publicly funded entity meant to advance science and technology in support of those missions. So for us, this is a very important question, trying to build an ecosystem around AI and compute that serves the goals and objectives of the United States. So we're part of the system of publicly funded entities that the government supports. And so having a capability, a domestic capability that includes both the infrastructure, the people, the tools, and the knowledge of and access to the tools of AI is critically important to us. For national security, this is immensely important. These tools are very powerful. They have the opportunity to change how we think about science and technology and how we think about that in relation to national security applications. So there again, those are critical elements of a sovereign capability to support domestic interests. And then I think that's the last thing to say on this is that with any element of the science and technology ecosystem, partnerships and collaboration are really important. So there's a balance to be struck between optimizing our system for our own interests and working with the best researchers, partners, and collaborators around the world. And so we're trying to manage that relationship in a very dynamic and rapidly evolving environment.
That's great, Tim. Thank you, Kim. And maybe I'll come to you, Dariusz. So obviously, a huge moment for Poland. You hold the presidency of the European Union. You're pretty much setting the agenda at European level, but at the same time, you have set for yourself an incredibly ambitious, pretty much unprecedented at European level, I have to say, target in terms of GDP that you'll dedicate to the digital transformation. So you're aiming at 5%. And you're also updating your national AI strategy. So could you tell us a bit more? How do you look at AI from your Polish government perspective and from a European perspective?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me because we are at the center of the global discussion on AI, and taking advantage from that, I would like to share the vision of not only Polish but European perspective on AI since the January the 1st. Because as Poland, we really set the target of 5% of GDP for digital affairs in our country. However, at the European level, as a European presidency, we want to push forward the AI apply strategy and other investment documents in the European Union, because we can all agree that we have a lot of regulations from the last European College. We have it enough, and what we need today is how to introduce the investment strategy for the whole European Union. And as a minister, after a year of my term, what I get to know in the European Union, if you want to get something done, you need to propose it by yourself at the beginning. So that's why we already set the first draft of our new national digitization strategy. We will publish this month our first draft of the new AI policy. And we introduced a new topic in the European Union because we have this great investment all across the European Union called AI factories. And I believe that could be one of the fundamentals of the AI sovereignty in Europe. However, we need to answer the question, why we need the AI factories. That's why we already started works how to divide the new computing powers between SMEs, academia, scale-ups, and further research. And we need to also address questions about data. Poland is the second in the world in the area of open data. However, it's only one of many countries of the European Union. We need to build our strong base of data to use in AI. And as you asked at the beginning, was the sovereign AI. Poland and other European countries faced this sovereignty 9 days ago, when the Biden administration made one of its last decision about dividing the world between 18 countries which are lucky without AI chips export limits, and other countries which are not lucky enough. Poland and Switzerland are outside of this club of being lucky. And why the Biden administration made that decision? Because they could. And on which base they made this decision, we are not certain. We really don't know. So if they made such a decision without any factual fundaments, they can change it in whichever direction they want to. That's the sovereignty. That's the sovereignty which is misused, but it's still sovereign use of AI. That's why I believe that it's the last call for European Union to build its own AI sovereignty.
Thank you, Dariusz. So you mentioned a lot of regulation in the last term of the European Commission. We need to put all this compute capacity to good use. And so, Kiril, Phil, would you like to maybe comment on the potential of sovereign AI applications and what kind of benefit it can bring to certain industries or R&D communities?
Yeah, sure. So I think obviously it's well debated how AI can help productivity of companies, and then when we think more about countries and we think about security. I guess initially when I heard about AI and then thought about it in security terms, I thought of defence, but actually it's way broader than defence, isn't it? It's about food security, energy, weather, lots of other aspects of defence and security for countries. And in terms of HPE, obviously we're one of the early pioneers in working with customers on AI projects, and some of the examples that we have in Europe with a small e, because I'm from the UK, and the first project I'm going to reference is a UK project, where I voted to stay, by the way, just so everyone's clear on that. Gutted. But anyway, we're working with the UK on a project there where they're looking at how they can use AI technology, in particular related to drug approvals for new medicines. So trying to shorten the time for approval of new medicines, and also looking at how we can generate more personalised healthcare solutions for people. So taking brain scans of patients and looking at the impact of drugs, again, trying to target more personal health plans. So that would be one example. And then the other example that we have, HPE, is working on the LUMI project, which is a European project based in Finland, I think the system is. And they're working on a project called Destination Earth, which is looking at weather patterns and creating a digital twin for the Earth, so that when you have an impact of a weather situation on one side of the world, how does that then trickle through and affect the European region? So that's how we're engaged with European countries on AI projects.
Great. So we heard sovereign AI needed for strategic industrial interest, healthcare, defense. So let's now start looking actually at the infrastructure that is required to power specifically sovereign AI systems. And maybe I'll start with you, Kiril, if that's okay. So obviously G42, an AI powerhouse, pretty much at global level. And you guys have announced, I believe, a year ago, the concept of the intelligent grid. So as electricity grid was powering, the world, your ambition is really to allow scalable AI through a network of data centers. Could you tell us maybe a bit more about the project and how more specifically you're planning to pan out these data centers, how they will be connected into a network?
Good afternoon, and thank you for attending this session. My name is Kiril Evtimov. I represent a company that is based in Abu Dhabi. But as Irena mentioned, we are expanding globally, and we're expanding our presence both on the infrastructure level as well as on the application development level. So for me, as a technologist and a business executive, when we talk about sovereignty, I think it's important for us to basically find the right balance, because there are a lot of very sophisticated and important use cases which do not require the highest level of sovereignty that most of the people think about. So when it comes to implementation, I think it's very important for us to consider the best options and the most practical options to achieve the business objectives of the entity that is implementing them. In certain cases, it requires a hybrid deployment methodology. In other cases, it requires completely private and fully controlled deployment of AI infrastructure. But going back to your question specifically about the intelligence grid, the concept that we have launched about a year ago, the idea is to develop not just an interconnected set of data centers, but deliver intelligence through infrastructure and applications deployed in these data centers, deployed in these clusters. So to answer your question, the way we think about the intelligence grid is a set of interconnected AI-specific clusters which provide everything from high-performing compute infrastructure to sophisticated cybersecurity layer that oversees the implementation of your AI capabilities, all the way with solutions that are very tailored toward a particular use case, and do this around the globe. We're expanding, and we're doing this in a very methodical manner. So obviously, as a private entity, we want to make sure that we are very responsible to our shareholders, but the idea is to expand this group globally.
And could you tell us maybe a bit more about the markets you're looking into at the moment?
Of course. So our primary geographic distribution is currently focused on the Gulf region, we already have over 6 clusters which are fully operational in the United States of America. We're looking at several emerging markets as well, where we will deploy the infrastructure in the coming months. Based on our partnership with Microsoft, we announced a deployment in Kenya, where we'll be using geothermal energy to power the data centers that we are going to deploy there. But it's also in our plans to establish presence in Europe as well in the coming months.
Great. So you actually, this is a very good segue to the next question, because you mentioned obviously sovereignty, and obviously at European level, there has been tremendous conversations and very patchy legislation and requirements in different member states. And probably France has some of more stringent requirements, as we know, to basically host sensitive data of public sector. As you rightly said, Kiril, we need to strike the right balance. So what is actually sensitive should be in a sovereign, let's say, cluster. What isn't probably doesn't have to. But if we zoom in specifically on the sovereign AI, you know, if we look at the infrastructure layer, practically, we can really host it in 2 ways, right? We can do it on-prem, and we can do it in the cloud. And so I would love actually the panel, and maybe Phil, you could start with your remarks, to tell us a little bit what are the advantages and maybe also disadvantages of each of the 2 models. And again, to your point, Kiril, probably, you know, looking at the use case, you may need different infrastructure. But Phil, do you want to kick this off?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously the public cloud has got many benefits and has had quite an impact on the world, hasn't it? But I guess in a sovereign context, Dariusz highlighted in his first answer some of the issues that we're starting to see geopolitically as to why countries might be concerned about where their data sits, how they can control data, and also the latency as well, by the way, associated with data, isn't it? Because if your data's in a completely different part of the world, as you're accessing the data is going to take longer as well. So I think latency is another consideration. So certainly when we talk to sovereign customers, they're interested in having what we would term to be a kind of private cloud for either security, privacy, latency, control, and also some cost reasons as well, because actually when they look into it, they find that private cloud solutions are sometimes cheaper than public cloud as well. So we see a lot of interest in kind of private cloud, and the way we deliver that as HPE is something that we term to be disconnected. So it's not touching at all the public cloud infrastructure. So we deliver that to a government. We try and use local partners as well to do that, to make sure that there's no security concerns. And then the solution just sits there, and as I say, it doesn't touch the public cloud infrastructure.
Great. So Kim, you're running the system in the world, right?
Yes.
So El Capitan, the most powerful supercomputing machine globally. So can you tell us how, when you were, you know, designing and how you're going to procure this, what were your considerations when you were thinking about on-prem versus public cloud?
Thank you. Yes, we're number one.
You are.
You never know. With our
That's quite an achievement.
With our partners from HPE and AMD. And you never know how long it will last, so I like to say it as many times as possible. You know, we do a very particular kind of work. We're a national security laboratory, so it's critically important not only that we have secure assets, but continuous availability. So we have to work very hard in a very close partnership with our vendor partners to make sure that all of our modeling and simulation tools seamlessly transition to these new architectures and new machines. There can't be a gap in service. We have to have control over our data. So, you know, having that on-premises capability is really important. And we use these procurements of these very large machines to really push the boundaries of what's possible. So building in our own ecosystem allows us to be much more closely coupled in that system and to spend more time experimenting with the hardware. And so when we think about this, we have built the expensive part of the system, the ecosystem that these machines reside in. We have the facility that has the right capabilities. It has the right power and cooling infrastructure. We have a team of people who understand how to run these machines at very high utilization, so typically above 95% utilization. When we have them on-prem, they know how to build the software stack, and much of the enabling software stack for these large HPC systems was developed by teams at our lab and in partnership with other labs and our vendor partners. So that, once you have that ecosystem established, the cost is not the driving consideration for on-premises. Now, these machines are very expensive, but again, very specialized needs for us, and a high degree of integration between our teams, the hardware, the industry partners, and the applications that we support. We do use cloud resources, and there are increasingly secure cloud resources that can be accessed, but it's quite expensive. And there are issues with things like latency and assured access and control of your data. I think for me, I think about the cloud as our easy expansion mode. So if we have a need for additional compute, or we have a surge in need, we have a particular training activity we're going to do with a new AI model, or we're bringing on a large tranche of students. We'll bring on 1,500 students during the summer, as an example. We can use cloud resource to scale up very quickly, and then as our need diminishes, we can scale back. So that flexibility is really a valuable part of cloud for our particular application.
Great. So on-prem, security, cheaper, more control, cloud, scalability.
Yes.
So Dariusz, you already mentioned the EU factories. So obviously, I'm sure people in the audience are familiar with the, let's say, previous name appellation, the HPC-JU centers, of which Lumi is one of them, and obviously Poland is a member of the consortium. But as you were previously mentioning, so the EU is really looking at how to seize, let's say, more the AI opportunity. And in a way, the Euro HPC JU centers are being, let's say, rebranded and repurposed. Can you tell us a bit more about the EU factories? And again, I know that also at national level, you guys are really, really ambitious in this space as well.
Yes, we are ambitious in Poland because this year we're gonna double our computing powers, and we want to scale that up following years. That's why also we want to set up our own AI factory in Krakow and the Cyfronet. And we already started to prepare for the second and third AI factory in Poland. However, we also started, as a presidency, the discussion on the general purpose and details of the AI factories, because it's wonderful that we're gonna have the network of AI factories in the European Union. But the big question is why we will need this network, and how we can use that. That's why our working groups in the Council of European Union work on the best solution, how to divide those computing powers between SMEs, public administration, academia, which AI factory could be specialized in which area, how to coordinate it, and what's even more important, how to connect those factories. Because El Capitan is not only the biggest one, but as I believe is the biggest, is bigger than 10 or 15 biggest European ones combined. So that's the scale that the European Union needs to pursue. That's why we need to get our advantage not on having the biggest ones in the world, but to have ours well connected. And that's the discussion right now, how to do it properly, to go into the field of priorities, of specialization, and how to connect them. Because today, as a Polish policymaker, I have some problems to use free powers of my neighbors because I don't have proper connection between us. That's why this is our top priority, to set up specialization and to connect European supercomputers wisely to do the work.
I think that's great. I really like your concept of specializing the clusters of the machines. So before moving to Dubai, I was 15 years in Brussels, and this has always been the problem we had in Europe, right?
Yeah.
Because we couldn't agree on how to verticalize some of the resources, and they kept being spread horizontally across sectors. And this is what actually doesn't generate scale. So I think if the presidency under your leadership could actually bring this home, that would be a really, really strong achievement for the European Union and really good use of the HPC machines of the JU. The other thing that I really like that you mentioned, and this is really a great segue to the next theme I wanted to talk about. So you basically said we have in Europe a lot of capacity, but very often we don't have the people that actually use it. And this was even before the JU, I remember this was still the problem. I won't remember now the name of the previous European program escapes me, but it was the same problem, that we had the capacity and we didn't have the skills to use basically this capacity. So sovereign AI, we said we need the right infrastructure. We need the right talent. We need people that are actually capable to use these incredible machines and the machine. And so I was curious if you guys could tell us more about how do you help developing and retaining this extremely sophisticated, talent, and where do you actually even find this talent? So whoever wants to go first.
Maybe I'll share a few examples in terms of how we at G42 are approaching this question. So one of the key accelerators for us to develop talent was to build a very strong relationship with academia. And specifically in Abu Dhabi, there is a university, a full-blown university, which is completely specialized in artificial intelligence. It's called Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence. So when we started developing our first large language models, it was really a collaboration between the business and the academia in developing this large language model. Finding tangible projects where you can bring people from academia to help will definitely support your talent needs. But when it comes to markets where you don't have the luxury of having universities just being across the street, the question is becoming even more complex to answer. And ironically, in order for you to be able to attract AI talent, you need to give them the infrastructure to experiment, to work with. So you need to make an investment in infrastructure in order to attract the best and the brightest. Very frequently, we see that people don't care only about, or I should say, don't care exclusively about the compensation. They care about what a company can do for them to give them access to the latest and greatest AI infrastructure in order for them to develop further their skills, in order for them to be able to experiment, in order for them to be able to grow professionally. So I will basically summarize this in working with academia and providing access of diverse silicon to people that you're bringing on board.
So I think for the national laboratories, we're large, multidisciplinary, team science-oriented organizations. We do science at a scale and level of complexity that you can't get in other environments, in an academic environment, or even often in industry. And we have very long-term horizons for some of our projects. So for example, my laboratory has been working on fusion for 60 years. These kind of big scientific grand challenges are a real attractor for people. So, having, for us, these important problems, working on climate modeling, working on new energy systems, working on national security challenges, working on the energy systems of the future, like fusion, working on computational biology, transforming drug design. These are things that draw people into the environment, that sense of purpose. You have to give them infrastructure. We don't just have the number 1 machine, we have the number 10 machine. We have 14 of the top 500 machines, so we have this massive compute infrastructure that allows you to do many different things. But we also have large-scale experimental facilities. So data and kinds of data and scale of data, again, that you don't find in many other environments. So bringing together the 2 essential elements of this ecosystem in a really unique way. Lots and lots of colleagues in different disciplines. So in terms of an innovation environment, it really has a lot of attractive qualities. My lab sits, half an hour with no traffic, which never happens, from the Silicon Valley. So there's a big attractor there for people to go into the private sector where the rewards are very much more significant than they are in the public sector. But many people come back. There's a natural cycle of people who are drawn to this very unique environment that we have. And I think for the DOE labs, having partnerships with academic collaborators and partnerships with industry is also a critical part of this. Academia is obviously a pipeline, but a source of new ideas, not just new people. And our industry partners are critically important. This nexus between hardware, software, and thinking about the future doesn't work unless these sectors work together. So I think that stew is really what allows us to build the workforce that we need. Until you are in the middle of one of these new emerging technology areas, it's hard to project exactly what kind of skill sets are going to be the right ones. But we're having a great opportunity right now to build what the workforce for this new environment looks like for the future.
Great. So we hear access to infrastructure. This is really attractive. We hear from Kim, obviously, the partnership with industry. So Phil, do you want to maybe spend a few words on how do you collaborate from that perspective for talent, upskilling, and retention?
Yeah, I mean, so HPE is Hewlett Packard Enterprise. So it originated, obviously, as Hewlett Packard, which actually started as a company about 85 years ago, weirdly. We got 60,000 people. And so actually, if you look at our age profile, 85 years old for a technology company is old, isn't it? So I mean, like, I'm a teenager in HPE. No, but when we look at our age profile of staff, we do get concerned about that. So we have a lot of efforts broadly trying to target younger generations. And I think sounds like we're all doing the same thing, which is going after academia and trying to target university students, helping them in this space. And we have our staff either facilitating access to these systems, volunteering their time to help students run models, be it in kind of modeling weather patterns or drugs, whatever it might be. That's where our efforts are focused.
Great. Dariusz, any final comments? Because Poland has a very strong talent pool, so there was really a strong vision to develop it. So could you maybe tell us more from really a governmental perspective? What was your vision to come and achieve your objectives where you are today?
Yeah, when it comes to talents, I have a pretty opposite problem. I have a lot of talents, and you can find Polish people in major AI companies all around the world. However, the challenge is how to keep those talents in Poland and how to give them opportunity to flourish, to develop their careers at the local stage, at the regions. And we have conducted, as a Polish government, a research, and we surveyed our companies. And we found from this survey that more than 630,000 Polish companies want to invest in cloud and AI in the near future. What they really want and what's the obstacle to do this is not only about money. What's the primal issue? It's they really do not know how to do it properly. They exactly need to provide them the expertise how to implement cloud and AI wisely in their companies, because they do not want invest shallowly in just random service from which they will get out within a couple of months. So I see from the survey and from our further analysis that to keep talents in the country is to give them demand for their research, for their implementation of their innovation. And we see that maybe we are at the dawn of the moment where our companies, not only in Poland but all around the world, are ready to introduce in their chain AI solutions, so we can go to scale up lavishly this technology. So it could be the great pillar for careers of our talents in just the near future, and country which will be the first in investing wisely public money to support the entrepreneurs in implementing AI. I believe it will be the winner of this stage of implementation.
Thank you, Dariusz. So we spoke about use cases of sovereign AI. We looked at the infrastructure piece and we heard the advantages of the on-premise powering of sovereign AI. We spoke about talent, and now I would like to address the last aspect, the last element that is critical for success of large sovereign AI systems. And this is actually how you're going to power these systems and how you're going to do this efficiently. There are tons of statistics of how energy hungry these systems are. So I could quote any number, I just picked one. By 2027, the energy demand of AI systems is equivalent to actually the energy powering as a country of a medium size. Enormous. And yet, if you look at the last top 500, so the listing of the 500 most powerful HPC machines, you also have a parallel listing of the top greenest 500 machines. And there were some really, really cool and probably unexpected results in the November list of the Green Top 500. Why so? One would think that the machine that Kim is running will be incredibly energy hungry. And yet, you're actually number 18 on the Green 500 list. So can you tell us, Kim, how are you the most powerful and one of the greenest?
That's a great question. When we first started the journey to move to exascale, so a billion floating point operations per second, the projections were that each machine would take about 200 megawatts to power. And of course, that was a non-starter. So again, these partnerships between our researchers and our industry collaborators to work on innovative ways to manage power usage in these machines. And so, what uses energy when you're computing? Moving information around uses energy in the computer. So one of the innovations is to make the chip architectures more integrated. So move the memory and the compute closer to each other so you spend less energy moving data around within the system. The system we have, LCAP, has a very unique chiplet architecture, which has the GPUs and the CPUs on these very small, very tightly packed integrated circuits. So very highly efficient architectural design and very efficient cooling and power delivery, water-cooled system. So many of the things that would be power hogs in a traditional compute system have been innovated out. So it uses about 30 megawatts. So the scale of innovation over about 10 years is really remarkable. I think there's a parallel as we think about AI, particularly for scientific applications. If you think about what large-scale AI models or large language models are going to look like for science, the types of data that we're going to train those systems on for scientific applications are very different. They're very highly curated textbooks, if you will, of scientific data. So you don't need computing at the same scale you do to train a large language model on general knowledge. The data sets are smaller and more compact, and there's been some interesting research done on how well small models can do on these very specific use cases. So I think, again, innovating in the software space, thinking about the problems you're trying to work on and what is an efficient way to approach them. And then in the hardware space, I have high confidence in our innovative partners in industry that they're going to find new ways to make these machines more capable and less power hungry over time. Oh, and then, well, fusion. So in the future, you'll all have a fusion power plant, and that will help power your AI data centers.
Great. So memory and data closer to consume less energy. But Phil, what about the cooling of these systems?
Yeah, so one of the capabilities that we focus on in HP is direct liquid cooling, which versus kind of other methods of cooling should reduce power consumption by about 90%. So we're pleased to be a technology partner with Kim on the system, and that technology works well there, I think. And then also I referenced earlier the Lumi project up in Finland, where again, with a technology partner there, we're using direct liquid cooling to cool that system. And then with the hot water that's coming off the system, we're actually pushing that into the local city to help with their local heating system as well. So, you know, we're trying to make sure that we're conscious about how we're cooling the system, but then also with the byproduct trying to generate some benefits for the surrounding community.
Fantastic. So direct liquid cooling, 90% less energy consumption. And on top, you can actually reuse the heating for Kajaani, for example, in Finland. So I think we are reaching now the very final aspect or theme that I wanted to address in today's panel. So we all understood, I think, sovereign AI is very, very relevant for some vertical industries, but these systems are very expensive. These are large investments. So I guess I have two questions. So the first one, and maybe I would start with you, Kim. So when you were thinking for El Capitan, so you kind of touched a little bit about cost earlier, but could you tell us a little bit more about the cost element? And maybe then a question to the entire panel. Large investment, how do you make sure that there is an ROI for governmental money that is actually spent on these systems? And I guess then, Dariusz, this is also a question for you.
So we think about the cost in two parts. Typically, we're buying a first-of-a-kind, one-of-a-kind machine to do very specific kinds of modeling and simulation. So we're not a big market. So we're not going to get a great deal because thousands of people are going to go out and buy these machines for traditional modeling and simulation. So for us, we try to understand what the trends are in the industry, what the technologies are that are becoming mass market for compute, and then trying to adapt them to our uses. So that's one way to sort of manage the cost envelope. The second thing we do is buy compute at scale, what we call commodity computing. So sort of standard issue clusters that we do a lot of day-to-day work on that aren't necessarily the advanced architecture machines. And the third thing we do, I mentioned we have El Capitan's baby sister, Tuolumne, was bought on our institutional internal discretionary dollars. Because we bought this large-scale machine, the incremental cost of adding a little more compute onto that is much less expensive. So we're able to build out our ecosystem on the back of this sort of centerpiece, more expensive procurement. So these machines aren't cheap, but again, we're trying to buy to do something that's not a common application in the industry. But that last part, the buying on the back end of that procurement, is really an extraordinarily good deal. So Tuolumne, the scale up from our current machine, so all our machines are named after natural features in California. So El Capitan is a big natural feature in Yosemite National Park. Tuolumne is the meadow in there. The prior machine was Sierra. El Cap is about 20 times bigger than Sierra. Tuolumne is also bigger than Sierra. So this scale up our new baby machine is bigger than our last mighty #1 machine that we cited. So we're in a moment where the scale is just mind-boggling. Sorry, I went off script there.
So in terms of spending in this area, we need to, as a public administration all around the world, change our way of thinking. And we already had a lesson of that. For example, Polish public administration has its own LLM. It's called Plum. It's a wonderful tool for our clerks and in the future for all citizens in our mobile app of public administration. It's wonderful, but it already changed the way of thinking of our accountants. Because it's quite a change to develop a model. You need not only money for wages, but you need a lot of money to pay energy bill, and you need to have even more money to build a computer, which is a supercomputer, and it's not normal computing power. And as countries, we made this shift in mentality before, because this is the same like 200 years ago. People would ask the question why we need to build these highways, those railroads, those airports 50 or 60 years ago. Those were also great infrastructure investments which are not directly giving revenue to investors. And this, I believe, we are in the next step. And as governments and private investors spent money for the infrastructure 100 years ago, and we see how the profits high are right now, the same story is to tell and the same change is to make in terms of AI infrastructure. And I personally, I'm really happy that European Commission and European Union join this adventure together and with both sectors, because in Poland we already start our investment with our Ministry of Defense. Because it's not only about economy, it's not only about entrepreneurs, it's also about our security. That's why we merged our funds and we invest not only in economy but also for the resilient future.
Fantastic. I think you have a great vision now for the presidency, so we will wish you a lot of success. I think you offered to the audience really great ideas, and as I said, we wish you a lot of success in the next 6 months. It's going to be a very busy time for the government. So we're driving now towards the end of the session. So to wrap this up, we understand sovereign AI is critical for national security, research and development, and a number, as Phil was suggesting, a number of vertical industries, healthcare, pharma, and so on. We understand that we have 2 models to power sovereign AI. On-premise, as Kim was saying, is actually cheaper than the public cloud, and as Phil was saying, gives you more control over data and give you better latency. We talked about energy consumption. We understand that there is technology out there, such as direct liquid cooling, that is actually drastically dropping by 90% the energy consumption. And we talked with Kiril about the skills and how basically the availability of infrastructure is driving the availability basically and development of skills. And as you said, you need a vision from the government to basically develop this ecosystem and partnership with academia. So with that, we're reaching the end of our session. However, as I said at the beginning, we are co-sponsoring together with our friends from G42 and the Polish government, the AI House, with intention to be a catalyst of conversations. So this was really a kickoff of a debate. We're all going to hang out here in the next coming days. So the whole idea was to give you some, food for thought. Please reach out, continue the conversation. I would like to thank our really incredible panelists. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your insights from all your different perspectives. Last but not least, I would like to thank Daniel Cohen from HP, who pulled this fantastic panel together. Thank you all for being with us, and we'll see you next year at the AI House. I wish you a great Davos.